Hello PreCalc. It's Friday the 13th and this is the weekend video in preparation for Tuesday's test on sinusoids. I would like to go over a few things. So, of course, we're going to have to graph the sine and cosine curve. So, one more time. When you put in your tick marks, you've got to give me a clue what these are. So there's some people who don't like to do that. So you know who you are, Mr. T and others. Alright, so here we have the sine curve. It goes up to 1, starts at the origin, goes up to 1, down through, supposed to go through pi, bottoms out at 3 pi over 2. See, I didn't even write all 4 in, but at least give me a couple so I know where you mean for it to be going through. So you don't need all 4, but at least give me pi and 2 pi. And then when it goes down through pi and bottoms out at 3 pi over 2 at -1 and comes back to the x-axis at 2 pi. Alright, we're pretty good with that. I could ask you some questions about it, like what is the amplitude of the sine curve? So, say sine theta, what is the amplitude? It is from the center line, the line that cuts the graph in half, to 1. So that's an amplitude of 1, the highest point. That distance, you could also look at it as this distance, although we want the positive number. So the amplitude for the sine curve is 1. The period, how far before it starts repeating itself? One mountain, one valley, and it's about to repeat itself. That took place in 2 pi radians. That's the period. The center line, what is the line that cuts the graph in half and horizontally? That is the line, the x-axis, y equals 0 is its name. What is the y-intercept? Where does it cut through the y-axis? Here's the y-axis. This graph cuts through right there at 0, 0, which is the y-intercept. And lastly, what's the domain and the range? The domain is all the x's that will touch this graph. So I start down here with a bunch of x's, and as it goes up and down, this graph goes forever. So no matter where I pick an x, if I go up or down, I'm going to hit the graph somewhere. So every x is connected to this graph. So we say x is an element. I remember our little symbols. X is an element of the reals. Here's the mathematical symbol, and that tells the reader X is an element of the reals, tells the reader that all real numbers are in the domain. The range, however, if I look at this y way down here at -2, I can go to the left and right, and I never touch this graph. So what values for y will touch the graph if I go left and right? We say y is an element of the reals such that -1 is less than y, which is less than or equal to 1. So that's the fancy version for domain and range. You can say it in common language, all values for x, all reals. And you can say here, all reals between -1 and 1. Alright, well, let's do the same thing let's do the cosine curve. I'll just do it right on here. Cosine starts here and comes down through pi over 2, bottoms out at pi, comes back at 3 pi over 2, and is back on the mountaintop at 2 pi. And that continues. So let's do the same thing for cosine. The amplitude is the distance from the center line to the highest point. Once again, that is 1. The period, when does it start repeating? From 0 to 2 pi. 2 pi again. The center line, the same. The y-intercept is different. Where does the cosine curve, this darker curve, touch the y-axis? Trying to darken it. I'm just messing it up. Alright, it crosses right here at the point 1, 0, not the origin. What is the domain and range? Well, again, this goes on forever and ever, so all real x's again. And the range, again, is the values between -1 and 1. Okay, so alrighty. Okay, so a lot of similarities, a few differences between sine and cosine. The other graph that we're responsible for is the tangent curve, and we haven't worked as much with it, so let me bring it back to mind. It has two asymptotes. They're like electric fences, and the snake is kept in the box by the electric fences. Alright, I didn't have quite enough wobble there. I don't want a whole lot of wobble for the tangent curve, but some. So let me do that a little better. Alright, y equals tangent theta is right there. Alright, do I have room on this list? I'll start again. Let's go through the list for the tangent curve. Alright, so we have amplitude, and that's the difference between the center line and the highest or lowest value. This goes on forever, so it's not applicable. There's no amplitude that I can describe, period. It starts here and goes here, and then it would repeat itself. So from here to here, this is -1/2 this way and 1/2 this way. So all together, do you see there's a half on this side and a half on this side. So altogether the period is 1 full pi. Center line is what horizontal line cuts it in half. Again, the x-axis, y equals 0. What's the y-intercept? Is where it crosses over the y-axis, 0, 0. Domain. What values for x? Here's my x values that I can think of, and all the ones